Or social media platforms rather at K24TV on Instagram, Facebook, as well as Twitter. And remember that SMS 9 is 21222 if you prefer to text. And of course, if you would like to call in and weigh in on an ongoing discussion, our numbers are going to be at the bottom of your screen. So go ahead and talk to us this morning. Now today we ask just how important is preserving your culture to you? Do you believe that in today's world, as a global citizen, there really is any need to still know your mother tongue and understand the cultural practices of your people? Well, today we talk about the relevance of indigenous languages and culture in modern day society and just how should we go about revitalizing them. Many actually wonder that if in a few years to come, by the way, will our languages become extinct? Well, joining me for this conversation is Gathu Gitua, who is from Go Sheng. He's seated right next to me. At the center is Muchoki, who is an educationist and parent of 5, mother of 5 actually. And at the very end is Dr. Kenneth Ngure, who is a linguist and will be telling you about some of his works that he has managed to publish as this conversation continues. But let me start by welcoming you all to studio. Karibu sana, Dr. Ngure. Nice to have you. Thank you, Anne, for being with us. And of course, Gathu, thank you so much for coming through.
You're welcome. Pleasure.
Okay, so here we have a very interesting discussion, and it's kind of like food for thought if you ask me, because how many of us really think about the importance of, you know, speaking our mother tongue at home? How many of us go about thinking about whether or not our children should actually know their mother tongue? Let me start off with you, Dr. Ngure. Do you feel that the biggest threat obviously would be modernization and Western culture, so to speak, coming through?
Yeah, thank you so much, Shiko.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed, the Western culture, or what we call globalization, is a great threat to our languages, especially indigenous languages, and by extension, our culture. Yeah, and that is something that should be of concern, of great worry, because when you lose your language or when you lose your culture, you are actually, you lose part of you. Yeah. You are actually no longer stable. And so globalization is quite a great, it's a threat, and we need to really be concerned about that. Yes.
Okay. When you think about other parts of the world who are still moving forward, still being able to preserve their culture, still preserving their languages, and why do we fail to do so? Yet when you go to India, they still have their different languages and dialects that they go through with or they use every single day. Our neighbors in Somalia, I mean, people still have their languages, but for us, as Kenyans or as Africans, it seems to be quite a challenge.
The first thing is, I think Africa has the language, the highest language diversity. In Kenya only we have over 40 languages, which in itself is a problem when it comes to unity. But beyond globalization, let's take my own example. My 5 children are what I call cucumbers. They are Kikuyu and Kamba, and they speak neither. And this is because my husband and I, we speak to each other in English and Kiswahili, what is our considered global languages. So beyond even globalization, there's an interaction aspect, especially in Nairobi, where we are marrying outside of our, ethnicities, outside of our tribes, and it creates, we learn language by practicing it. So if you're not practicing it in the house, if I'm married, for example, to someone from Turkana, I can assure we will not communicate in their ethnic language. So that is also something that's happening, just the natural progression of interaction. I think of culture as a very dynamic, flexible thing, and I always think that culture should be subject to humanity. Our language is going to become obsolete. A lot of them probably are going to. It is the natural progression of, where we are going to. I'm a Kikuyu. I speak Agikoyo. I speak it because my mother and my father are Agikoyos, so it was my first language. It was my father tongue. I have a problem saying mother tongue because we literally speak our fathers. We are recognized by our father tongues. So are they important? Like I was telling Dr. outside, I'm like, I'm yet to be convinced.
Yet to be convinced.
Beyond the sentimentality of it, I'm yet to be convinced.
Okay, and let me rope you in, Gathu, because you're going to tell us a little bit about Sheng and how it's a culture and now, you know, a language on its own in just a second. But just to add on to what Anne is saying, especially you who works with the youth almost every single day, you all do they see this as being relevant? Because let me ask you, okay, I'm learning Kikale or I'm learning Kamba for what? You know, I'm looking for that job to work in America. I'm looking for a job at the UN. How is it going to help me?
You see, unfortunately, just like my colleagues have mentioned, we are losing, you know, the importance of our languages, our natural languages.
Yeah.
People are moving more and more into urbanization, globalization, just as you mentioned. And English and Swahili are becoming like the most appropriate languages to use across board, whether you're doing business, interacting with your friends, family. If you're to go to any, say, Rorashio or any social gathering, hardly will you find them, you know, interacting in mother tongue, unless it's deep in the Gishagi. Yes. Unfortunately, we need to put more effort into, you know, digitizing or keeping the languages alive. Because if you're not speaking them, definitely, just like they mentioned, they'll die off. They will die off.
Okay, so tell us a little bit for those who are not familiar with what Go Sheng is all about.
Well, Go Sheng is a social enterprise, and our main mandate is to preserve and, let's say, document the growth and the changes of the Sheng language.
Sheng, wow.
And cultures.
Who would have thought we would see this day? When we are seeing Sheng actually being regarded as a language.
Yes.
Why do you feel, as part of Go Sheng, that, by the way, this needs to be more or less, for lack of a better word, officiated, and people should actually look at Sheng as a language on its own? It's not just...
Well, simply because anytime you move outside the, say, formal, like even like in this studio, outside here you'll start talking in Sheng, you know, because you want to talk to someone in a more relaxed atmosphere, nothing too formal, and Sheng is actually the best avenue to do that.
Okay, and as a teacher, your background is teaching, does this almost feel like Sheng has interfered with young people and how their oral and writing skills, as far as that is concerned, their mannerisms have changed because of Sheng? So it's kind of hard to, you know, teach as well.
I think the background of Sheng kind of started in what you call the ghetto. When we were young, right? And I think the problem as older people have with Sheng, it is so dynamic. Just when you've caught up with the lingo, it's changed. They are transposing words. It's actually literally a foreign language. And Sheng has affected the writing skills, formal writing skills and official writing skills of children, of students. Beyond, it's a very, for lack of a better word, bastardized version of so many languages that it is affecting formal language. And what I think a problem we have with it as the older population is that its roots were roots of a manner of rebellion, and it is mostly associated with, well, like we put it, hoodlums and thugs, which is not necessarily true, but that's the association it has.
Yes, it has a negative,
so most teachers do have a problem with Sheng. You remember we had to wear that thing, you remember, what was it called, the model, the mantle, every time you spoke in Sheng. And where we all basically slaughter the Kiswahili language. We do, we all slaughter the Kiswahili language. I think Sheng still has a way to be accepted as a language.
And you know, Dr. Ngure, speaking on that, you can imagine how hard it is even for a teacher to go about correcting papers, or marking papers rather, because here you are trying to do Kiswahili Sanifu, and compositions or your inshas are completely off because there you go. Someone has decided to just throw in a Sheng word, but you see, it's just part of who we are. Before I respond to that, I just wish to make a slight correction. You know, there is this fallacious belief that when you have many languages, when there is linguistic diversity in a given country, that it is not possible for people to be united. That is not true, because
look at a country like Somalia.
Yeah.
They use only one language, but these guys have never been united. Another example is Rwanda. They use one language, and when they went, slaying each other, they were still using one language. Yet we have other countries that have many languages. Kenya has we're talking about 72 languages.
Right.
Not what politicians say that we are 43 or something. The languages themselves are about 72.
Yeah.
And then a country like Papua New Guinea, I know some people don't know that this is the country with the highest number of languages, with about 700.
Oh, wow.
700, and we've not seen them in the news fighting.
Yeah.
They are still united. Now, coming to that question of Sheng, for us as linguists, we actually don't crucify Sheng. We celebrate it. We actually celebrate it, and we feel that it is being persecuted wrongly by teachers.
And parents.
And parents,
yeah.
Because this is what we tell teachers, that you just need to make it clear to the learners that all these languages are ours, and each of them has its domain of operation. When you come home, the language that you use with your parents, mostly it's the indigenous language, for those who speak it, and unfortunately there are those who don't speak it. But then when you are maybe going to the shop, or you are likely to use Kiswahili or Sheng. Then when you are interacting with your peers, Sheng is most likely the best language.
Okay.
But when it comes to writing exams, writing composition, there is something known as Kiswahili Sanifu.
Right.
And that is its domain. So stick to that.
Right.
If teachers could impress this on learners, I think all these languages could coexist harmoniously.
Okay. I managed to actually speak to the likes of Professor Kimani Njogu, Professor Kitheka Beria, who is abroad. And Beria was, so passionate, and he said, oh my gosh, Shiko, I really wish I could show up for this discussion, because this is, his passion, where his heart is, because he says, if we are not promoting the mother tongue, what about our identity? Do you see us going through an identity crisis as a people if we are not promoting our languages?
Yes, indeed. That is, and this I would say it's a time bomb.
Yeah.
I would refer to this research that was conducted some years back in British Columbia, that's in Canada.
Yeah.
And they discovered that cases of suicide among the youth were very high among those who had completely dislocated from their ancestral culture and the language. We're talking about, they used to be called Aboriginals in Canada, but these days they are called the First Nation. So they realized those who had disconnected earlier and did not have much to do with their culture, their language, suicide cases were very high, because these people are grappling with questions of who am I? Identity. Right. Identity crisis. And I would wish to, to imagine that one time Kenyans will be there.
Will be there.
And unfortunately, it looks like that's the trajectory we're
headed to. Okay, let me rope in our viewers at this particular point. What is your take on this? And of course, through the question of the day to you in regards to our discussion on language and culture endangerment. We want to ask you, how do you think we should go about reviving our mother tongues? What is the best way to revive our mother tongue? What are you putting in place in your own household? Why don't you tell us if it's even working? How are you doing this with your kids, by the way? We'd love to hear it. And by the way, our lines are actually open if you do want to call in. If you've got even a question or a comment to throw to one of our panelists this morning, you are more than welcome. Okay, so back to you, Gathu, and talking a little bit about Sheng and, its place in society. How do you go about then enforcing or encouraging young people to do what Dr. Ngure is actually talking about having Sheng in its own place, as opposed to using it in the classroom, in the home, with your grandparents? Are there any restrictions?
There are hardly any restrictions because you'll get to notice that right now, even in the education system, most people are turning to sort of like informal ways to pass across the message. So just like she mentioned, a teacher will try and explain a point to a student in the best way possible, and they'll even slide over to Sheng, all right? Now, unfortunately, if you go to your house, you can't use the light switch in your sitting room to illuminate your bedroom. Just like you mentioned, every language has its own space. And slowly by slowly, all these spaces are merging into one, pot. It's becoming very hard to distinguish what is official, what is not. And that, I think, is the biggest challenge that maybe we'd be facing right now.
The fear here that Sheng could actually take over our official languages is also another issue that has popped up, because before you know it, people really will not know the Kiswahili Sanifu that Doc is talking about here. And I think this is where you will cringe. Because can you imagine a world without Kiswahili Sanifu? It's very hard. But it seems like we're getting there. Anne, your thoughts on that?
First of all, when it comes to Kiswahili Sanifu, Kiswahili is taught just like a language in an education system, like you teach French, like you teach German. And our official language of instruction remains English, hence the popularity of English. Now, my experience with Sheng, beyond speaking it, because I was born in Jericho, is that it has affected our youth. I have been in the hiring process, and our children do have a problem with communication. They cannot differentiate between what is official and what is colloquial. So as Gathu, as the linguist was saying here, that as teachers, and every time people say that, as teachers we all like tense up, because we've been given so much responsibility. In more that we are to raise the children, we are to make sure that the official languages are separated. Like I keep asking, why do parents give birth? It's like they come and talk to us teachers and we make a collective responsibility, the parents and the teachers. Let's have your children and let's raise them for you. It is very hard to separate the languages for a child. It is actually a work in progress to get children to stop speaking colloquial and move over to official. I think we need to recognize that. And the world we live in officially, you have to speak language that follows certain rules. Sheng is not allowed in most official capacities. Beyond what are considered artsy careers, right, where it's cool to be like that, there's a place for it. Young people don't know what the place for it is. They will come to the language and say Niaje, and it's an interview, and you all cringe. And you all cringe. You know? And the problem with language, not a problem actually, language is just an expression of a culture, right? The culture of Sheng is very loud, let's be honest, it's loud, but they don't have a problem in Sheng. I think it's a beautiful, it's one of the most dynamic languages in Kenya, because what you speak last week cannot speak this week changes.
That's true.
Which for me creates a problem with how are you actually digitizing Sheng?
By the way, because it's always
so obsolete so fast.
It's evolving so fast.
You know, it becomes, I mean, English language takes like 100 years or so for it to for words to change. Sheng, it's very dynamic, so that's something you need to talk about. But officially, I do have a problem because they don't know what is official and what's colloquial. And it shows, it is showing. And now my greatest problem now is the colloquial aspect of English. Which is really foul language. Really foul language, which is becoming now mainstream. I mean, cursing now is mainstream. So that is also an aspect of language, isn't it?
And it reflects through everything they do.
It reflects through everything because colloquial has become so mainstream.
Listen to this. I just want to share this particular article that I came across, and it's so interesting. And this one is by Nigerian author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who was one of the speakers at the 7th Annual International Igbo Conference, and this was actually last year. Now, the one-day conference discussed Igbo heritage studies, and Adichie's presentation was on Igbo Bu Igbo. And during this presentation, she revealed that her child only speaks Igbo, which was very, very shocking to very many people, because because it was a deliberate decision that she had made. Now, she went on to say that many homes on this continent still deliberately don't speak their local languages. Indigenous languages are not used as a form of communication in many homes. It is even surprising that parents who both come from the same ethnic group do not speak their indigenous language to their children. As Adichie pointed out in her presentation, some of these parents argue that they do not want to confuse the child with learning two languages, but paradoxically enroll the child in French and German lessons simultaneously. What is up with that? I have never understood. You come to any school, any institution, even in the newspaper today, French, Arabic, now we are on Mandarin, everyone is learning Chinese. But there is no emphasis on you learning Kamba, Kikuyu, whatever. There are no language centers. Let me hear your thoughts on that.
Well, that's a nice observation. I think the problem that we are dealing with here is that of prestige. Our languages are deemed not to be prestigious.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so that's why I think we've even seen it around. A politician would openly admit that my Kiswahili is bad, my mother tongue is bad, but they would hardly say that of their English, even when it is obviously bad. It's about prestige. So I think the best way to go about this is try to think of how we can lift their prestige. There is something that I noted the other day. There was a local TV station that had a program where they were going around to tap the talents, the youth talents, and they were in a certain part of this country, and I was very excited to see young people coming out to say that they have a talent. They are reporters.
Okay.
And in what language? In their vernacular.
Oh, that's brilliant. Let me hold you just there for a second. Let me just hold you right there, Dr. Ngure, because we've got a caller on the line. Kagwema from Limuru, I understand, is on the line. Hopefully he's still there. Good morning.
Good morning, Chico.
Yes, morning.
How are you, my dear?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm very fine. I'm just enjoying the conversation you're having on the TV.
Yes.
And I just want to say that it's a very good discussion. And on culture preservation is that we need to encourage our children to talk their mother tongues. Personally, I like talking Kikuyu. I'm doing a lot of research on Kikuyu because a lot of our wisdom is hidden in our language.
Right.
In our idioms, in our parables, in our storytelling. That's what we used to do. And we need to know the fact that it is the Muzungu who did away with our language so that he could colonize us well. Are we there?
Yes, I'm there.
So we need to do away with the domination of the Mzungu, so that because he taught us to hate our own things, our own things, he called them kienyeji, our uga is kienyeji, our way of dressing is kienyeji, our language is kienyeji, our prayers are kienyeji, and he was able to colonize us. But it's a high time we decolonize our minds, and now we start teaching our children. I am very proud. I like expressing myself in my mother tongue, and I teach the young people. I'm an elder. I teach young people about that. I'm very happy about the program which is going on.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Do we still have Joshua on the line? Oh, from Kirinyaga. Yes. Good morning, Joshua.
Morning, Shiko.
Yes. How are you today?
I'm good. I thank God. Now, allow me to contribute.
Yeah.
Number one, I think we've always misunderstood language. I think language is the main purpose of language is actually communication. So I find it very funny when we talk of people saying that we need to preserve our culture, hence we need to preserve our languages and our mother tongues. Language should be used for purposes of communication. That's number one. Number two, I think now going forward, it's going to become increasingly difficult for us to preserve our mother tongue.
Right.
Especially now that we are living in more integrated societies. And societies and ethnic communities are blending. So there will be some kind of organic growth and emergence of new languages that all the societies and communities are able to understand.
Right.
And finally, I think as we move on, gradually mother tongue is going to fade and it's going to die out, because you realize that the mastery or ability of people to understand and communicate in foreign languages is becoming prestigious, and it's also becoming a symbol of status. So with the growth of the middle class, you realize that mother tongue will slowly fade away, especially in the urban settings, and probably be left in the rural settings. But going forward, ultimately, mother tongue as a language and probably as an aspect of our culture is going to die out.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Dixon, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Yes, karibu.
Yeah, asante sana, nashukuru sana. Yeah, so I just want to kuchangia kidogo kwa hiyo mjadala.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, in our modern generation hii, yeah, Sheng is like overthrow Kiswahili, English, so we are all depending on Sheng. Many talk we are depending on Sheng, because ukiangalia pia zile nyimbo tunaimba saa hii, yeah, all of them, there must be a Sheng inside. So Kiswahili and English ni kama zimewekwa kando. So the generation to come, absolutely itakuwa tu Sheng. Wacha tu tukubali hiyo maneno ikuwa tu Sheng.
Okay. Thank you so much for that, Dixon. Okay, so you've had it for yourself, and I'll be, getting your thoughts on what some of our callers have actually said. You've had it that Sheng is here to stay with us.
It is here to stay.
I really want your thoughts on this, and of course, continue talking to us on our social media platforms as we continue to talk about language and culture endangerment. Where are we going as far as our mother tongues are concerned? What do we do to revitalize our languages? And even in your home, how are you actually doing this? What is the best way to revive our mother tongue? We're going to take a short commercial break, and then when we get back, there's definitely more to come. Keep it K24.